Excellencies, High Commissioner and Ambassador, Human Relations Coordinator, National Security Coordinator and Special Advisor of the President of the Ghana Initiative, Senior Official of the Ghana Armed Forces and Ghana Police, retired Brigadier General KWIBUKA29 and members of the Ghana Battalion that was part of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Rwanda, who were on duty in 1994 during the months of the genocide against the Tutsi, and who were to make time to join us. Participants join us virtually from Rwanda, including DG Paul Rutesha of the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement, and Mrs. Dimitri Sisi Kanidira, a survivor of the genocide against the Tutsi, that we're here to remember and who will share a testimony with us. Chairperson of the Rwandan community, leaders of private and civil society organizations with us today, all colleagues, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you everyone for allowing the time to join us today as we commemorate a lost one who was killed during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1941. Thank you for including the invitation to join us this forum session to remember our video on genocide lives of our loved one killed during the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda 30 years ago. Every year, Rwanda and the world stand in solidarity to remember the victims of this hate. April 7 is also United Nations designated International Day of Reflection on the Genocide. In Ghana, Rwandans, government of Ghana and friends of Rwanda are taking today to reflect on the genocide against the Tutsi and recommit to our role in preserving memory, honoring the victim and preventing similar atrocities from ever happening again in our world. Every day of the 100 days of genocide against Tutsi carries a strong reminder of that event that characterized this period 29 ago, a time when people were hunted only for being assigned to be a given group of addressed by their own government. As the KWIBUKA team reminds us to remember, unite, and renew, we must use a moment of this to reflect on our own collective responsibility in making the commitment to genocide never again a reality, not a slogan. This requires to uphold the truth of what happened, starting from rightly calling the genocide against the Tutsi what it is. Because to this day, there are many who still find it hard to refer to it as genocide against Tutsi, and instead of use other names, either a result of gift or outright conflict, fueling negationists and dishonoring the country's least who targeted dignity only for being born in a certain group. Without upholding the truth, we deny our world the opportunity to truly learn what has happened and thereby fail our every effort to effectively prevent such bad story from repeating itself over and over again. Rwanda, for 29 years, continued to uphold the memory of lost work, lost. However, it meant the haunting reality that many masterminds and perpetrators of the genocide against the Tutsi still find safe haven in various countries. Hardly a month ago, one of such notorious masterminds took James Kassema, who, the first human criminal to Rwanda indictment in 2001, have divided justice for more than 2 decades. We continue to call upon all of you, in the government and the international community, to mobilize for justice to serve. Rwanda is ready to try this fugitives if they are extradited, but instead of delaying justice, it would be best for countries unwilling to extradite to try them in their own courts. Let us all remember that justice delayed is justice denied. In his remarks at the start of Commemoration of the 29th anniversary of Genocide against Tutsi, in August 7, His Excellency President Paul Kagame addressed this challenge, reminding us the importance of upholding the truth. I quote, "We must fight revisionist ideology because they are easily passed on from generation to generation. We must fight the now because what is how history repeats itself." End of quote. Expressing Rwanda's thankfulness to countless partners in this new journey, the President in his speech on 7th April said, "We will forever be very grateful to those friends and partners who stood by our side, and some countries to do so in the sake of justice and well-life development. Among those friends are countries such as Ghana, who stood with Rwanda in 1994, and whose commitment in the fight for justice and shared development we wish to continue to count on. As I conclude, I thank you once again for joining us, paying homage to the survivor of genocide against the Tutsi for their effective strength and resilience. Thank you for kind attention to our purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Theophil. At this juncture, we'd like to hear from one of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We want to hear her testimony as a reminder that this did indeed happen, and it happened to people, not just fiction or anything. I'd like to invite us to pay attention and probably remind us to put our phones on silent so as not to disturb everybody else in the project. Thank you very much. tried to make a small change in the schedule. We are still trying to get a person giving us the testimony online. So at this point, we'd like to take the address from the UN Resident Coordinator.
Colleagues from the United Nations, representatives from the African Union and ECOWAS, representatives from the government of Ghana, and representatives of the armed forces of Ghana and the Empire Initiative, civil society, academia, traditional faiths, leaders, their presidents, the media, the people of Rwanda who are also in the room, and the friends of Rwanda, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I stand before you today on this solemn occasion of the International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. This is the 29th commemoration. A day we remember by honoring the continued intergenerational trauma and impacts and sacrifice of survivors, especially women and children, and remembering all those whom we lost during the genocide against the Tutsi. And in Rwanda, my counterpart, I know, did this same speech in front of the monument where the names of these people, they're not numbers, are etched. It is with profound reverence that we remember the unfathomable tragedy that befell Rwanda in 1994. We mourn the 1 million children, women and men who perished in those 100 days between April and July of horror, and reflect upon the lessons learned and the path forward towards healing and reconciliation. The genocide against the Tutsi shattered lives, tore families apart, and scarred a nation's soul, and rests heavily on humanity's conscience. We also commemorate the death of UN colleagues who were killed during the genocide. The 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda did not only impact Tutsis, but also Hutus and others who were opposed to it. We paid tribute to the resilience of the survivors. Today, as we remember those who perished, we must confront the painful truth that the international community failed in its responsibility to protect. The genocide against the Tutsi serves as a haunting reminder of the consequences of indifference, inaction, and the potential for humanity's darkest impulses to manifest themselves. We must never forget what happened and ensure future generations always remember how easily hate speech can transform a once peaceful society into one of instability, violence, crime, and war. How complacency in the face of atrocity is dangerous, and how no place and no time is immune from danger, including our own. Preventing genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and other serious violations of international law is a shared responsibility. It is a core duty for every member of the United Nations. Together, let us stand firm against rising intolerance. Let us be ever vigilant and always ready to act. The Secretary General of the United Nations urges us to forge a common agenda to uphold human rights and the dignity of all. However, amidst that darkness, we also see rays of hope. The resilience and strength of the survivors, the unwavering commitment of individuals and communities to rebuild and reconcile, and the collective determination to prevent such atrocities from occurring again are characteristics of our desire and resolve to heal. It is these beacons of light that guide us as we strive to create a better world and through these dark moments. And these are also the essential ingredients of socio-economic transformation. Rwanda provides a startling example, and a sterling one, of rising out of despair to create an engine that inspires hope at home, on the continent, and the globe. The theme of this year's commemoration, Remember, Unite, Renew, is actually a call to action. It is a call to remember the victims, to honor their lives, and ensure that their stories are never, ever forgotten. It is a call to unite, to stand together against hatred, bigotry, disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech. It is a call to renew our commitment to human rights, to justice, and the prevention of genocide. Never again must we allow this to happen. We must remember the path of healing and reconciliation is not short, but long and arduous. It requires us to confront our collective past, acknowledge the pain and suffering inflicted, and work towards building bridges of understanding and empathy. It necessitates a comprehensive approach that addresses the root causes of violence, promotes inclusive societies, and fosters a culture of dialogue and respect. Let us unite. Here I want to concur strongly with the sentiments of the UN Secretary General, and I quote, "We saw what happened in Rwanda in 1994, and we know the horrific consequences when hate is allowed to prevail. We must redouble our efforts and forge a common agenda to renew and invigorate our collective actions going forward. In doing this, we must defend human rights and continue to push for policies that fully respect all members of society. Rwanda experienced one of the most painful chapters in modern human history, but its people have rebuilt from the ashes. The people of Rwanda have shown us the power of justice and reconciliation and the possibility of progress. On this solemn day, let us all commit to building a world guided by human rights and dignity of all." That's the end of that quote. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to see a world increasingly defined by intolerance, hate, disinformation, misinformation, let us be mindful everywhere, including here in Ghana, of the destructive power that wreaks havoc when difference, for whatever reason, is weaponized. Let us be mindful also that technology, especially in this modern world, makes this increasingly instant and viral. Just a week ago, as the UN also on June 18 celebrated the International Day for Countering Hate Speech, I spoke passionately about these matters in a media event organized by the Media Foundation for West Africa. The world is witnessing a rapid expansion of media platforms, particularly digital media, and the rise of citizen-led media, which, if not well regulated, will continue to raise concerns and pose threats to peaceful coexistence. The rise of artificial intelligence, with all of its positive potential, also creates new challenges that we must seek to confront as we battle misinformation and disinformation, that often validates and spreads falsehoods and hate speech, all of which deepen divisions among communities, societies, and peoples. Let me repeat what I said there. Let us make no mistake. Hate speech is divisive and inimical to peace and security, and it simply cannot be ignored. It is profitable to those who perpetrate it. It gains traction in the minds of those who consume it. It must not be sidestepped as an inconvenience. We must act in bold and decisive ways. Education will play a key role in this process, and this memory and remembrance is a key part of that education. We must educate our children about the atrocities that occurred in Rwanda and other genocides across history. By teaching the next generation the values of tolerance, respect, and empathy, we equip them with the tools to challenge prejudice and discrimination wherever they encounter it. We also said that we must all act at an individual level. We must seek to first pause before we spread. Check facts, challenge facts, support victims, report incidences, educate and mediate. We must show leadership, finding the balance between the rights to freedom of speech and expression and acts that deliberately weaponize division and challenge the trap of those who seek to divide. We must lead responsibly and by example among all the peer leaders across the board, from politicians and government leaders to traditional and faith-based leaders and leaders across all walks of life and the media. We must build strong institutions and we must legislate to be clear where the red lines are and hold individuals, institutions, and bodies to account. There must be consequences enshrined in law and upheld and seen to be upheld. We must support survivors and provide them with the necessary resources to rebuild their lives. Their stories are a testament of the resilience of the human spirit and a reminder of the atrocities committed. By empowering survivors, we empower a nation to heal and move forward, and to a shared vision of peace and inclusion. As we reflect on the genocide against the Tutsi, we must also recognize the genocidal dialogues and acts of mass violence that continue to plague our world. We cannot turn a blind eye to the suffering of others, for in doing so, we risk history repeating itself. We must stand united in our condemnation of all forms of hatred and violence and remain vigilant in our pursuit of justice. And with the Sahel in our own backyard and some of the crises that we face here, it is important that we reiterate, never again. Let us today renew our commitment to preventing genocide and protecting human rights. Let us renew our dedication to fostering a world where diversity is celebrated and inclusion is the norm. Let us renew our promise to the victims of the genocide against the Tutsi that their lives were not lost in vain. In closing, let us remember that the victims with reverence, honor their memory in action, and renew our commitment to a future world. Permit me to read and quote finally the statement of the Secretary General on this important day. And I quote, "On this International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, we mourn more than 1 million children, women, and men who perished in those 100 days of horror 29 years ago. We honor the memory of the victims, the overwhelming majority Tutsi, and others who opposed the genocide. We pay tribute to the resilience of the survivors. We recognize the journey of the Rwanda people towards healing, restoration, and reconciliation. And we remember with shame the failure of the international community. A generation since the genocide, we must never forget what happened and ensure future generations always remember. How easily hate speech, a key indicator of the risk of genocide, turns into hate crime. How complacency in the face of atrocity is complicitory, and how no place and at no time are anyone immune from this danger. Preventing genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and other serious violations of law is indeed a shared responsibility. It is a core duty of every member of the United Nations. Together, let us stand firm against rising intolerance. Let us be ever vigilant and always ready to act. And let us truly honor the memory of all Rwandans who perished by building a future of dignity, security, justice, and human rights for all. Let me commend Ghana for its solidarity and support, and for its own vigilance and actions across the board on this important issue, both here, regionally, sub-regionally, and globally. The United Nations today restates its strong commitment to continue excellent partnership with member states and the people of Rwanda, not only in fighting against genocide, but in contributing to peace and reconciliation, to the Rwanda we want, and to the world that we deserve. Honorable representative of the Rwandan people, the UN joins you in this solemn period of remembrance, with continued and renewed commitment to support national and global efforts that build peace and promote unity and social cohesion. We owe this to our fallen colleagues, to the Rwandan people, and to ourselves. I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for the message of hope and those commitments to the Rwandan people and the entire world. At this point, would like to hear from one of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, who is also an author of a book called Do Not Accept to Die. She's Mrs. Dimitri Sisi Mukanyirigira.
Good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. Do you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Dimitri Sisi Mukanyirigira. I'm joining from Kigali. Like it has been said, I'm a genocide survivor, and I'm an author of Do Not Accept to Die, which is a memoir of my testimony on how I detailed on how I survived the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994 in Rwanda. I was 22 years old, and I was about to finish my high school. when the genocide started. In Rwanda, it was a school holiday, and we were all home. By that time, almost all schools were boarding, and every break we should come home and stay with parents, families, and siblings. So when the genocide started, we were all home, busy with our normal duties, but we didn't know by that time that we were about to be killed. The way the genocide against the Tutsi was prepared, we were all put on lists, and our neighbors, Hutu, and the killers, militia in Interahamwe, had our names on their list to be killed, but we didn't know. We didn't know all those details because that was following a lot of years, decennies of discrimination and ideology that made our parents and our grandparents suffering the whole years, but without any space or freedom to share with us. It is only after the genocide of 94 that we knew all the truth, that we knew how our parents were like beaten in 60s or put in jails or even sent to exile, and were refused the right to have a country. So because of all that fear and discrimination, they didn't have time or space to tell us so that we can at least know how to behave or to live or to protect ourselves. Because I was 22 years, I've seen a lot during my education system. The ideology of genocide was all over. So Tutsis were refused the rights to get schools, to get jobs, to even get travel documents. So with all that fear, we grew up with a feeling of being rejected in your own country, in your own communities. But also on the other side, we got used and we had the life. We had our fun, our joy, our happiness. We knew that we were admitted in many occasions, but we tried to have a life, meaningful life with our parents and our siblings. So that is why when the genocide started, it was very unfortunate and bad to see everyone being killed innocently. So my testimony will go on what I saw before the genocide and what I saw and lived through the genocide, the 100 days, and after the genocide, how we as survivors, we joined efforts together with all Rwandans to build now a peaceful country where we all have same rights, where we have children, and we hope they have a future. So like I said, before the genocide, we were all victims of discrimination, and the then government was paying all details in identification of the genocide. They knew where is Tutsi, where they are living, how many of Tutsis are in school or in any office or administration. So that is why in every 2 weeks or every term, all teachers in primary school were like forced, or it was mandatory for them to identify Tutsis against Hutus, so that if they say Tutsi children stand up. So because Tutsis were living in a poverty, in extreme poverty, they should even they were not able to afford schools. So we're always very few in a class, but still we stand up for the Hutus colleagues to see us. Like identify your friend next to you on the chair is a Tutsi. But the objective of all that was to know each other, so that they don't, if something happens, they know who is Tutsi, who is Hutu. So that exercise was very frustrating all over. And sometimes we couldn't even know where we belong. Then if they say Tutsis stand up and you don't, the teacher can even punish you, beat you, or send you back home, and he will tell you in a very frustrating way, go ask your parents what is your ethnic group and come back to school. So with our parents living under a constant fear, they were not comfortable telling us, like, my daughter or my son, you are a Tutsi. So that was a way of putting us down all the time. But because the Hutu peoples were many in numbers, they would stand up, very happy, jubilating that they are many and we are few. So this was a culture or a process, a procedure in the whole education system. And at the end of any cycle, being primary school or middle school, high school, they all know we are Tutsi and them are Hutu. So that was a very bad process of identifying us against them. So we all went through that. And at some point, it became like a normal for us. At the end of the primary school, all Tutsis were not given the chance to go to high school because the right to education was refused or very limited. For me, my family, we were 7, and we were all doing very well at school, but we were not given a chance to go to school. At that time, the economic situation in Rwanda was not giving chances to private school. So if you are not given a place in a public school, then you stay home. There was no any other chances. Out of 7 children, were only 3 who were given a chance to go to school, and that was at a very bad price. Sometimes they ask you to go and do corruption to a minister or a leader in your sectors so that you can have a place at school. On the other side, even finding a job was not easy. I remember my brother, Donat, he was refused a chance to go to school. Then he did a vocational training to become a tailor. He spent all his years as tailor at the market in our place. And then for all Tutsi young men, the vocation was only to become, the highest was to become a driver. So he spent a lot of time looking for a license, driving license. So they would make him and many of his friends fail the exam. So he did more than 8 years to 10 years looking for a simple driving license. so that he can move from being a tailor to become a driver. That was the sort of all the Tutsis. So they make them go spend the night in a stadium waiting for the day and pass the exam, and you do it well, all the instructions, but they tell you because you're Tutsi, you just failed. So all those practices of discrimination that you went through made people understand where they belong, and again not have a right to even negotiate. So all the generations or ages were like that. As for me, I did, actually it was very common in Tutsi families that the parents will always encourage us children to go to school. You know, they could sell like a land or cows or whatever they have to be able to pay your school. Then they will tell you, go and study. We don't know what the future holds for us, but please go and study. Because they were used to see Hutus and politicians, authorities come and burn their houses, take their land for free. So they were like, if you go to study and you excel in your studies, then you will succeed in life. Because for them it was like, even if we are dying, if they kill us and you survive, you will make a life out of education. So the advice was always to go and be great and study hard, get it. So when I started my school, that was the message from my parents. And I was very bright. I was doing very well at the school. And I was going through all those discrimination measures and procedures. But at least for me, when I ended the primary school, by that time we were doing 8 years at primary school. I was very bright. I was at the top of my class, and I was expecting to have a good combination of studies. I actually innocently requested sciences, but they told me, because you're a Tutsi, go for this social work. And there was no way I can say no. Having that chance was already a big deal. So I went for social school. I still did well, and that was okay for you. For Tutsi women and girls, they were saying your destination is at home. You know, you can't excel, you can't go to work, go do your social work, come back, be a wife of someone. And that's all what you can have in this Rwanda. So I went through all this, and I was only 18 years when I was caught as a spy, and I was put in prison, saying I was spying for RPF. That army that was attacking, starting a liberation war, and all Tutsi inside were considered as the spies, because they're saying all these people from RPF, from Uganda, from all neighboring countries are your families who were living as refugees in those countries. And they were always threatening them that if you come back, you kill your relatives inside. So by that time, that was in 90, I was 18. And because I was in a school in the north of the country, while my home was in Kigali, in the central city, that was enough to be considered as a spy. So just because I was a Tutsi, a very innocent girl, like there is no way you can't be a spy. That was for my case. But for many others in Kigali, in every city, the businessmen, the teachers, everyone, every Tutsi in Rwanda was considered as a spy and therefore in danger of being accused or put in jail or killed, or just losing his job. And the school I was doing, we used to do internships in every vacation. So I was doing my internship at the center, not far from, like 4 kilometers from my home. And on the road every evening, we could just come back and find the road block every day with my age mates just becoming killers. People, young boys who have been to school together, who have been playing all the games at the village. It just became your potential killers. So by that period, every time we go, we leave home, we go to work, people go to work, go to church, go to market. And that's for me, I was going to internship. Every evening, there is no way you can go back home. So it became very often that when you go, you leave your home, you don't know if you come back and sleep at your home. And that was like in 91 or 92. So the period between 91 and 94 was very dangerous in every corner of the country. You come back home, you can't pass. You are in the bus, they come, stop the bus, look at you, take you out. That has been done on me many times. So during the genocide, I was on vacation, like I said. It was an Easter holiday, and I was at home. We had a big celebration at Easter, and we never knew it was the last time. My other brother that I Donat, that I was telling you some few minutes ago, was actually introducing his fiancée to us. That was at Easter. We went to church. He came, brought his fiancée, introduced her to us. Then we had a party day at home, all of us, and with dances, singing, drinks, like it was really a celebration. But that was the last time we saw each other, all of us. That same brother, Donat, and fiancé were all killed. And that was a Sunday. Then on Monday, my sister, I had a big sister, her name was Dansila, and she was pregnant of her second baby. And one day after she became sick, she was admitted in a hospital. And for me, I had a plan to leave my village on Thursday to go with my other two colleagues in the western part of the country. We call it Karongi or Kibuye. It is a big lake, Lake Kivu. So because we were finalizing our high school, we decided to go there, have some quiet moment, and prepared for the exam, for the finals. And so Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we were at home with my other sister, Domina, and my younger brother, Damas. Us three were the youngest, and we were still at school. So others were working. So on vacation, we could be home, do some domestic works, and then the afternoon have fun, go to church, go to football, go to movies, So all these 3 days, I was one of my siblings. Donati and Donatilla, the biggest, were at work, and they would come at night. And on that Wednesday, because I had to go to Kibuye the day after, that was on the 6th of April, I spent my day with my siblings at home, like normal. And in the afternoon, after lunch, we all went to our different programs. My young brother Damas went to play football just near the Amauru Stadium because we were not living far. My village, KWIBUKA, was not far, was in 2 or 3 kilometers from the stadium. So we went all together. I was going to say her to the hospital to see my other sister who was sick and say goodbye to her because I had to go to Kibuye. It was a far place. And then Domina, my immediate big sister, went to another place we call Rundera to see her friend who was traveling the next day. She was to travel next day to Germany because she's got a scholarship to go to school. So by that time we had only one flight connecting Rwanda to Europe, and that was a Belgian Airlines, and it was coming on Wednesday every night and it goes back on Thursday morning. So she went to pay farewell to that lady. Her name was Theophile. And for me, I was going to the hospital and Damas was going to football. For us, it was a normal day and we would come back in the evening and, see each other again. So that was the last time I saw both of them because Domina went to Ndera. Ndera is not far from the airport. And in the same night on the 6th, when the plane crashed, immediately in the same night, there was a lot of roadblocks. They couldn't come back. So she was killed in Ndera with all that family where she was going. So they killed all of them in Ndera on the days that followed. And Damas, my young brother, is the only one who came back home, but she was also killed with machetes on the 7th after 3 weeks of hiding in the bushes and it was genocide. Everyone was hiding. They came to our house on the 8th morning. They killed Donat, the other big brother I told you. And then Damas continued to hide until 27. That is the day he was killed. And Domina was killed in Ndera with the family that hosted her because that same night they couldn't come back. And for me, because I was in the hospital, and in the night, we also couldn't come back home because immediately all Kigali roads had roadblocks and killers in the night. So for me, that same night, my brother-in-law, he was actually taking care of his wife, and he told me he was tired. He was like, "Can you please replace me tonight? I go back home, and I come back tomorrow morning so that you can, continue with your plans." So I said yes. I stayed in the hospital. He went home, and he was killed also on the 8th in the morning. So I survived because I was not probably at my village. So I was in the hospital, and the big part of the genocide, I saw it in the hospital. So in that same night of 6, a friend came to visit us at the hospital, and he was a gendarme, a pastor and a gendarme who was a friend, but he was a Hutu. And while he was still visiting, they asked us to go home. Like we can discharge her, and she continued taking her medication at home. For us, it was a good news because by that time, every single area was just dangerous, including the hospital. So we did everything on paperwork to go home, and that gendarme, Lieutenant Daniel, was to take us to home driving, and we did. For me, I was happy that I go to Kibuye, and I want to be late, waiting for my Gilbert, the Dancela's husband, to come back. Then we went. We saw from the central town to my home. went to Daniel, but in the middle of the road, he stopped his car, went out, and responded to a call. And that call was like, wherever you are, go back into the barracks because something bad happened and you can't continue that direction. Then he came back into the car, told us, I can't continue with you. Something very bad is happening in your area. So he took us back into town to our auntie. Her name is Margot. So in Auntie Margot's house, for us it was like it was becoming a normal to not go back home at every day because there is always violence on the street. So he took us to that place. For us, it was we spend the night and go back home. But we didn't know that the president's plane was crashed and he was dying together with the president of Burundi, and that was a very big thing, and the genocide started immediately. So we never went back home, and we survived in the city. So we stayed for 4 days at Muhima in our auntie's house. But every day, every morning, the killers would come to count us, to check our papers, and then take every belonging we have, shoes, money, radios, everything, so that they don't kill us immediately. We collected every single thing we had, gave them to survive one day. But after 2 to 3 days, we didn't have anything else, so it was time to be killed or just start running. So when we hear testimonies, every genocide survivor has a day we call a death day. You know, like the day you have been killed or the day you have been, the worst day of the experience. You can have many days, but that is because we survived. For some people, other people, that same day they were killed, and they are no longer here to tell the story. So for me, my death day is 11th of April. That is the day they came and decided to kill us. They were no longer accepting things because they have taken a lot, and they said now it's time to kill you. So we were like 8 people in the house, women and men, including my sister who was pregnant for 4 months. But we were asked to come out in the compound and lay down and wait to be killed. So that is the day everything was single thing changed. After 11th, we were beaten. There was specifically beaten, and we started that day running in the bushes, sleeping, spending the night in the bushes, under the rain or the sun, without anything to eat, just using grasses to eat as food, or waiting for the rain to have something to drink, some water to refresh and continue. Because during the genocide, the killers wouldn't accept to stay under the rain. So every time it rained, for us, the victims, it was an opportunity and occasion to go to change hiding, or to breathe, or to look for something to eat. So after 11th of April, between 11th and 17th, I was in the bush hiding, and listening to killers around, coming to search for people, killing some other people around. So that was the beginning of the genocide for me. So I had another sister who was a nurse, and after 5 days, she went back to the hospital, feeling because she will be working at the hospital, and then she will be able to find an opportunity to come back home and take the other sister who was pregnant and me and myself. So when she went, she came back to look for us, and she took my other sister, but they couldn't find me that time. So after some days, I also joined them in the hospital because she came back, and there was a man in the area who knew that I was in that bush, but fortunately he didn't mention my name was to kill us. So when he saw my sister and the cab and the van looking for someone, he stopped them, saying, "I think you are looking for a small girl who is hiding there. Let me go and call her." So he came, he called me, and I joined the hospital again. And that was on 17th of April until May 25th. I was in that hospital. And everything was bad in the hospital. They were killing people, children, mothers, everyone who was sick and admitted in the hospital and happening to be a Tutsi was on the list to be killed. But when I was going to the hospital, we all thought that would be a safe place. We had some Belgians or French doctors in the hospital. We had some medical staff who were military staff. So for me, I was a feeling and a hope that we were going to be safe in the hospital. Fortunately, it was not the case. And I had seen a lot of tortures, killings, vans going to collect bodies on the street, bringing them into the mortuary, and next day bringing prisoners from the Kigali Central Prison to dig the horses and put them, in any order and go back. It was a very horrible thing to see, seems to see every day. And as for me, there was a lieutenant. His name was Pierre or Peter, and he was the judge of the hospital security at the top level. And he told his aide to keep an eye on me because he wanted to kill me himself. So that was a protection on one point, on one hand, because all the killers coming wanted to take me, and the aide, the corporal, his name was Corporal Neziryayo, was telling, this one is for my boss. So they should just go and share victims. I'll kill her. Keep it for me, Just let her sit there because when I have time, I'll kill her. So that was our daily life. And at some point, do you still hear me? Do you still hear me? So I think to conclude,
Who can hear you?
it was a very bad experience to see people being killed every day in your eyes. But also I thank God I survived, and I'm here to tell the story of human craziness of killing others.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
But also a story of resilience. If you can't hear me, that's all. I will just ask you to buy my book. It is also on Amazon, and to get the full testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dimitri, for sharing with us your story. We apologize for the hiccups in the sound. We know most of you couldn't hear anything, but as I mentioned in her introduction, she wrote about her testimony in her book, Do Not Accept to Die. So if you are interested, you can probably check online. I'm sure you'll find it. And there are other testimonies from different people. You can also check that out. We would like to welcome the representative of the government of Ghana to give us his or her remarks.
His Excellency Theophilus Rwanga, Chargé d'Affaires, Embassy of the Republic of Rwanda, Mr. Charles Abani, UN Resident Coordinator, the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps, Major General Retired Henry Kwame Anyidahu, Major General Retired Joseph Na Adinkra, the Rwandan community in Ghana, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am here to represent the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Honorable Shirley Ayoko Boche. I am honored to represent the Minister at this solemn ceremony being held to commemorate the 29th anniversary of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Let me begin by expressing appreciation to the High Commission of Rwanda in Accra for the invitation to my minister and for organizing this event to honor the memory of the victims and to reflect on the past in order to chart a path for the future. 75 years ago, in 1948, United Nations member states approved the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, a treaty born out of the fervent desire to ensure that never again would any person face the horror of genocide, such as the atrocities inflicted by the Nazis during the Holocaust. The convention was the first human rights treaty adopted by the UN General Assembly. Its approval came just one day ahead of proclaiming the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on 10 December 1948, which explicitly laid out the rights inherent in all. Today, the world, unfortunately, is still not free from the threats and reality of the odious scourge of genocide. Excellencies, 29 years ago, over a period of 100 days, close to 1 million people, the majority of whom were Tutsi, who courageously opposed the genocide, were systematically murdered. The haunting images of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda against the Tutsi are still painfully fresh in our minds. Acts of unspeakable brutality and inhumanity resulted in men, women, and children being slaughtered simply because of their ethnicity. More than 1 million innocent children became orphans by choice of unfathomable human tragedy. The theme of the commemoration, Remember, Unite, Renew, is appropriate now more than ever. The event reminds us of one of the darkest chapters in recent human history, and offers us an opportunity to honor those who were murdered and reflect on the suffering and resilience of those who survived. We must unite in confronting those abominable tragedies of the past as a way to advance towards a future with peace and dignity. It behoves on us as a duty to the victims and survivors to stand united and prevent it from ever happening again anywhere in the world. Excellencies, as we honor the memory of those who were murdered and reflect on the suffering and resilience of those who survived, we must renew our resolve to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again by firmly rejecting and speaking about all forms of racism and discrimination. In doing so, we must identify and address the causes of conflict and violence and take swift action to prevent them. We must avoid atrocities and translate our unwavering commitment to the words never again into tangible realities by guaranteeing the basic tenets of a free society, such as democracy, characterized by good governance, respect for human rights, rule of law, accountability, and inclusiveness. Excellencies, distinguished guests, the global community has learned lessons since the 1994 Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi and renewed our resolve to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. Sadly, the world is still grappling with acts that divide us and breed hatred, such as xenophobia, racism, intolerance, widespread proliferation of hate speech, and incitement to violence in many parts of the world. These developments undermine human values, social stability, and peace, and we must all, at all times, speak against racism, xenophobia, and related intolerance, including social and ethnic discrimination, anti-Muslim sentiments, and anti-Semitism. This is a collective responsibility for all political, religious, and traditional leaders, civil society organizations, heads of educational institutions, among others, to reject hate speech, discrimination based on gender, religion, race, ethnicity, and minorities. Excellencies, distinguished guests, despite Rwanda's experience of the worst atrocities, it has, under the able leadership of His Excellency Paul Kagame, President of the Republic of Rwanda, demonstrated remarkable resilience. Survivors of the genocide, despite their profound loss, have made extraordinary and tremendous efforts to rebuild their country, their communities, and their lives. Rwanda has made great strides in the provision of healthcare, education, and the empowerment of women who are actively involved in governance at all levels in the country. It is remarkable that a country which became a theater of internecine conflict is now a major contributor to UN peacekeeping operations. Women now hold 60% of parliamentary seats in Rwanda, which is a rare development in any country around the world. Rwanda is a pioneer in banning single-use plastic bags and is now one of the cleanest countries in the world. Rwanda has a lot to share with the rest of the world as we pledge to work together to build a harmonious future for people everywhere. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the government and people of Ghana have and will continue to demonstrate unflinching solidarity with the people of Rwanda. At a time when the world literally abandoned Rwanda in its darkest depths, the Ghanaian contingent of the UN peacekeeping mission in Rwanda braved the odds and took a decision to stay back and save the lives of helpless people during the 1994 genocide. We in Ghana commend His Excellency Paul Kagame, President of Rwanda, the Republic of Rwanda, the government and people of Rwanda for the recognition of this outstanding act of self-sacrifice to the lives of others. On 4th July 2022, President Paul Kagame conferred on His He's conferred his country's National Order of Bravery. The Rwanda pronunciation it will be difficult for me, but it has a name in the local dialect. On Major General retired Henry Kwame Anyidehu, and Major General retired Joseph Na Adinkra, who are graciously present here for their decisions to stay back and save people from the 1994 genocide when others deserted the mission. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, let me reaffirm Ghana's commitment as a member of the United Nations and the African Union to work with other countries towards the prevention of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing in all forms, and their incitement. Together we say never again and renew our commitment to pursue the qualities of understanding, kindness, justice, and reconciliation to make the world a better place for all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Quick announcement. The owner of car with the plate number JB466921 is a Toyota Yaris. You have blocked someone, so if you're in the audience, kindly attend to the car. In the remarks that have been made before, we learned that part of commemoration is getting the facts right. So at this point, we are going to watch a video about the history of genocide so that even when we go outside, we'll know what to tell people. It was the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. So I entreat us all to pay attention to this. Thank you.
Buri gihe nkunda kwibaza ngo niki tutakoze twagombaga gukora. Ni hehe twasibye gutabaza, ni hehe twibagiwe kuvuza induru, ni hehe twanze kwikiriza indirimbo mbi yari itewe.